6 years and 60 million people dead, World War II is finally over. And so we take you now to the picturesque city of Nuremberg.
The ascent of humanity often seems just the opposite, the descent of humanity. How can we say then, even as we're about to discuss one of the most heinous crimes against humanity ever committed by our species, that this darkest of moments in human history was in fact a necessary kind of progress, albeit at a terrible cost? Again, a longer historical view is required. In earlier sessions, we've seen through the intellect of both Socrates and Galileo a deep desire to understand the metaphysical as well as the physical universe. Socrates prodding and scolding his fellow Athenians until they could no longer tolerate his penetrating questions about what is goodness, what is virtue, what is knowledge, and what really is the nature of mankind. And Galileo looking up to the heavens and realizing that in a physical sense, mankind was small, very small. And so humanity was, so to speak, at least in relationship to the physical universe, brought down to earth with a great thud. That thud was the realization that we as human beings might just have to get along with each other on earth without an active deity directing our everyday activities and actions. So how has humanity done on our own, so to speak? Well, it depends on your perspective.
2 weeks ago, if you recall, we described the Dreyfus Affair, and particularly the events leading up to it, including the Franco-Prussian War, where the French suffered 280,000 persons dead or wounded and 475,000 captured. The Prussians had 100,000 dead or wounded. Up to that time, individuals had no concept that they themselves might be held responsible for their actions on behalf of the state. In war, it had always been nation pitted against nation, with political leaders pulling all the strings and the individual combatants having no say as to whether or not they lived or died. It was the state, not the law, that decided judgment and imposed penalties. The Dreyfus case, with its emphasis on the individual, looked to the law for judgment rather than brute power. And reparations were of a human kind, and not, as previously throughout history, impossible economic and political sanctions. It might be seen in both political and social terms that l'affaire Dreyfus is the first legal case of human rights in history, but it took 12 years. By the time we get to Nuremberg, we witness a continuation of this concept that individuals acting on behalf of the state could be held personally responsible for their actions, which would in turn be seen as crimes. But what kind of crimes? And how might these crimes be adjudicated in a court of law where one is presumed innocent until proven guilty? Could the Nazis ever be presumed innocent? The concept, which was now officially called human rights, was still a new idea, particularly in the aftermath of a horrific war where the Allies in the main still lusted for vengeance. To humanity's great credit, we shall see how the idea of individual human rights became enshrined in a new legal concept of international law in response to the Nazi terrors.